You take that Fujifilm camera out of the box, I'm gonna go through my recommended setup tips. What do I mean by that? Hi everyone, welcome to Pal to Tech. If you see this red light on behind me, that is a setting that your Uncle Pal to Tech thinks you should take seriously and probably apply. We are gonna go in order of how you see the menus on most Fujifilm cameras. We are gonna start with stills shooting only, and we'll do movie mode secondly. So starting at the very beginning, you are in IQ. You see that right there? That stands for image quality. Most of the settings in here, such as these, affect images that are shot in JPEG format only. They don't affect RAW files. First one, image size. Make sure that you have the highest image size, the best quality, and that would be L, large, 3.2, okay? Start there, just like that. Next is image quality. I'm gonna say this once. I recommend that you shoot in both RAW and JPEG. If you don't know what RAW is, you'll thank me one day. Along those lines, don't do normal, do fine. Fine is the highest quality JPEG and RAW. What you're telling the camera basically is, when I go out shooting, I want the best possible JPEG and I want the best possible RAW. Don't settle for less. Next is the compression size of the RAW file. How big is that RAW file gonna be? You don't want it to be the size of a Winnebago, but at the same time, you want it to have all of the important information that a RAW file needs. Don't choose uncompressed, don't choose compressed, choose lossless compressed. That'll give you the benefit of a smaller file, but it'll retain all of the important information the RAW file needs. Next, select JPEG or HEIF. I would recommend keep it on JPEG. That will give you the minimal amount of fuss from getting these images out of your camera and onto social media or wherever you're gonna put them. However, this other format right here, HEIF, HEIF, right? That is a more efficient file type, and that is going to be the future eventually, but JPEGs are recognizable everywhere. Next is film simulation, and what I would recommend, particularly those of you that have never shot with Fujifilm before and are just getting started, I would choose Provia Standard. It has a more minimal amount of processing done to it than, say, Nostalgic Negative. And the reason that I'm recommending this is that as you are first beginning to use your camera and you're looking at the LCD screen or you're looking through the EVF, you want to see a more accurate preview of the JPEG without a lot of processing up front. It's sort of the default, general, plain vanilla film simulation for all situations. Next, make sure that grain effect and the two-color chrome effects, and especially smooth skin effect, are all off. What I've found with smooth skin effect is that it can make your photos, particularly the skin, kind of muddy and not good. Next, white balance, okay? Go into your white balance, and I would choose the top one right here, the auto white priority. Make sure that that little dot, you see that little dot right here? It's easy for that thing to get out of place. What would happen is you're out shooting and you kind of look through, you're like, geez, these colors are awful. Make sure that little thingy is right in the middle, okay? Right in the middle, there you go. R and B are 0. Next is dynamic range, okay? Now, in dynamic range, you may not see all of the options, okay? And that's because there is a minimum ISO value in order for some of these dynamic range numbers to appear. I have a whole video on this, and so I'm not gonna get too much into the weeds on it right now. I'm putting mine in 100%, and we're gonna move on. Go ahead and leave derange priority to off. Tone curve should be 0 and 0, color 0, sharpness, high ISO noise reduction, 0, clarity. If you want proof why this red light is on for this one, go ahead and shoot a photo with it in 0. Then go put clarity in, say, 4, and then shoot another photo and see how much time it takes the camera to take the photo, okay? Case closed. Long exposure noise reduction. This will double the amount of time it takes the camera to get you those images, so I've never really seen a huge benefit from this. I leave it off. Lens modulation optimizer, turn that on. The reason I say to keep it on is that if you're shooting with smaller apertures with your lens, it can help reduce some of the softness that you may experience in your JPEGs. For color space, I prefer to keep it in RGB, especially if I'm bringing these images into post-processing like Adobe Lightroom or Capture One. However, just to be clear, sRGB is more than enough for almost everyone, and that's what you see online, on the web, on social media. Pixel mapping, don't worry about it, and don't worry about any of these. Next, we go into autofocus manual focus. Focus area is pretty much the area where you're going to be selecting it using the joystick. So there's not really settings you make here. Autofocus mode. Now that's kind of an important one, okay? So what I would recommend if you're a brand new beginner, I would actually put it in zone. However, if you've been shooting with this camera for more than a couple of hours, I would put it in single point. That's what I would start with. I would definitely not put it in wide tracking. When you put it in all, that basically means you can kind of use the controls on the back of the camera to cycle through all these. I don't want to get too complicated with this, so let's just put it in zone. Some of you may see zone custom settings, and these are just some custom presets for that. For zone, basically, I would just kind of have the big square. By the way, I'm controlling the square dimensions like up or down or left or right using the command dials on the camera. Don't worry about AF mode all. AFC custom settings, that is the single most important autofocus setting there is on Fujifilm cameras, okay? The correct setting is the one that you choose based on your knowledge of this menu and how it works. It's your responsibility to tell your camera what your subject is going to be doing. Is your subject going to be going like this? Is your subject going to be going, boo? Boo! Your camera cannot read your mind. For most situations, what I have found to be the best is number 2, this one right here. For beginners, I think wrap focus point is important. Go ahead and put it on enable. That allows you to quickly go around when you're moving the joystick and trying to select your area of focus. Pre-autofocus, I strongly urge you to turn this off because this will chew through your batteries, okay? That way your lens isn't constantly going, Autofocus eliminator, you could have that on or off. I don't think it makes that much of a massive difference in most shooting situations, but the next one certainly does. Face eye detection. If you are shooting people, okay, faces, groups of people, whatever, for now, as a just get you started, put it on eye auto. Just like that. But only do that if you are shooting those kinds of situations. If you are going out and you are shooting trees, make sure that is turned off. Next is subject detection, and this one I generally keep off. However, if you're only out shooting automobiles and motorcycles, you might want to start experimenting with this. However, for now, for what you're doing, keep it off. Next is AF+MF, and I would definitely keep that one on. And that is simply that if you have the camera in either AFS or AFC mode, using your focus mode selector switch, this gives you the option, if you want to override and take control, to rotate your focus ring, and the camera will then defer and allow you to also focus, right, and take charge. So keep it on. It cannot hurt you, and it'll give you that little bit of extra focus control if you need it. Manual focus assist, peak, I would keep it on red, just like that for now. We're going to leave focus check off. I would also keep instant AF settings set to AFS for now. Now the next one is a little controversial. I believe these both should be set to release, but a lot of people smarter than me will tell you, no, put it in focus. What that means is you're telling the camera that when you're going to take your photo, if the subject is blurry, what should the camera do? Should the camera go, no, I'm just going to sit here and not do anything because your photo's not in focus, dummy? Or should the camera say, all right, I'll take the photo, you'll just get a blurry one? In other words, what do you want the camera to do? Do you want it to take the shot or not, depending upon whether or not it's in focus? I'd rather have a blurry shot than no shot most of the time. But if you're in a situation where you're shooting headshots and you can just continue shooting, that's maybe not as big a deal. Keep AF range limiter off. Touch screen mode, particularly for this camera, I cannot recommend enough to turn it off. Every time I would reach in my camera bag and pull it out, it would go, whoops, constantly be, shooting. I had it in burst mode. Pre-shot ES, we're not going to worry about these. Make sure self-timer is off. I would have self-timer lamp on, so do eventually decide to use self-timer. You'll know the lamp will be on. Photometry, I keep mine on center weighted. I think you'd be okay with multi. I would not ever put it in average. I don't think that works very well. And spot, unless you know what you're doing, you can screw that up pretty easily. Keep it on center weighted if you're new to this and adjust as necessary. Shutter type. For most of you, just keep it in mechanical shutter. However, that will limit the burst rate you can get on your camera. And I want you to get in the habit in your mind of knowing that if you have mechanical shutter on, you are going to be limited in the number of burst images that you can take. Suppose I go back to the menu and I go, oh, okay, well, I have to put in electronic. well, here's electronic, but you know what? I get the best of both worlds. I'll put it in this one right here, mechanical and electronic. And then you go back in, it's still not working because when it says ES, it wants ES. It wants electronic shutter. Make sure though that you know the limitations and what some of the problems can be when shooting in electronic shutter. So basically, I would put it in mechanical shutter. And if you want to learn more about mechanical versus electronic, there's a YouTuber out that has, anyway, flicker reduction, keep off, keep that one off. IS mode, I would recommend continuous. Yes, I know it will chew through more batteries, but it is very helpful. And on the X-E5, I still think it's worth keeping on continuous. Okay, your ISO. Now, some Fujifilm cameras allow you to just set your ISO as a top dial. This is not a tutorial on ISO. What I would do is I would go into Auto 1. And for now, for new people, forget about Auto 2 and Auto 3. Those are just other options you can pick. But let's just say for now, you're only going to ever use Auto 1. That's all I ever use. So if I go into Auto 1, my default sensitivity, and what that means is default ISO, okay? They're switching words around. It's default ISO 125. Keep it at that one because that's the lowest native ISO on the camera. But maximum ISO, you don't want the camera to ever be in a position where you've limited the maximum ISO to 800, say, right? And that's the maximum it is, the maximum sensitivity, they call it. And what is the camera going to do when you do that? It's going to raise things like the shutter speed. And so that beautiful image of your partner you're taking, walking past, is going to be blurry. You don't want that. So what I would do, max sensitivity, kick it up to 12,800. Minimum shutter speed, I would never put it below 1/60th of a second. For me, I usually keep it around 1/200. And so what I do is in the camera, I just most of the time set ISO to be automatic, and then I set a fixed shutter speed and a fixed aperture. I tell the camera how fast the shutter speed I want, and I tell the camera using the aperture dial, how wide open I want the shutter to be, which is basically me saying this is how much depth of field and nice background I want to generate. And then the camera then goes, okay, got it. That's what you want. That's what you want. Well, to do that, I'm going to have to then decide on the best ISO value. And so I have it on automatic to do that. Digital teleconverter, okay? Now keep it off. The reason the red light just went on is because sometimes some Fujifilm cameras, when you take them out of the box, the touch screen or one of the dials or one of the doohickeys, that's Paldetech's term for it, one of the thingies on the camera will accidentally be pressed or tripped or swiped, and it will cause digital teleconverter to be enabled. But you won't know that, you won't see it. And what'll happen is, maybe an hour later after lunch, you'll go out to take some photos and you will notice that a lot of stuff in here doesn't work. And you're like, wait a minute, I don't understand. Why can't I set this right? Digital teleconverter being on without you knowing about it is screwing everything up. We're going to ignore flash for now. This isn't a flash setup video. Now, we are going to completely ignore the little movie piece of the shooting menu. Remember, there are two movie menus. There's the main big primary home base one, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then there's this little kind of satellite one that's buried inside your stills menu right here. That's only in here for convenience, but it also confuses the heck out of a lot of people. Moving on, the wrench. A lot of frustration in life can be solved by going into the wrench. First up, user setting. Make sure that area setting is your time zone, particularly if you have two different Fujifilm cameras. You want to have the timestamps to be the same because when you bring all those into a folder or into Lightroom, you don't want them to be all out of order. Date and time, obviously, put it in the correct date and time. Sensor cleaning, okay? When switched off, on, when switched on, off, just like this. And this is a great way to do it because what you want is for the camera to do that occasional little, shaking the sensor a little bit to kind of get all that whatever off of it, but you don't want any delays when you first turn the camera on and you want to take that photo, okay? Firmware update. What they always say is make sure you put the latest firmware. Okay, yes, you should until, okay? Unless either it just came out that same day or you're a brand new user. I cannot tell you the amount of times that firmware updates come out and then they screw things up and then a week later a fix comes out. Next one on the list, sound setup. This is all just preference based, so set these as you want. But if things are beeping when they shouldn't be, or if you're trying to shoot inside, at like a church or something and you want the camera to be completely quiet, including the shutter, then you go in here and you can make those adjustments. Next is screen setup. So view mode setting controls what happens when you have the camera to your face versus looking at the LCD screen. Some Fujifilm cameras have like a little button next to the electronic viewfinder. And when you're looking through the viewfinder, you can control the brightness. I generally keep mine to auto +1. I would recommend keeping the color and the color adjustments to 0 for these two. Next are the same 3 settings, but for the rear LCD screen. Same thing here. I usually keep my LCD brightness at 0, but if you're out in really bright sunlight, you can bump it up and it does help. Image DISP, I give it to off. And what this does, obviously, is the minute you take a photo, it'll say, here it is, and it'll show it to you, in the back. So you can look at it and go, oh, hey, I'm pretty good. I don't like that. Play around with that, see what you like. I keep mine off. Auto rotate displays, that's if you're holding the camera in horizontal and then you flip it to vertical and it moves everything. I would keep this on, just like this. Now we've arrived at another quite important one. I would make sure that this one has both exposure and white balance, particularly if you are getting used to your Fujifilm camera. Basically, what you see is what you get here. And same thing with natural live view, I would keep that off. Now, if you're shooting with a flash and you are looking at the screen and it's just pitch black and you can't see anything, go ahead then and turn this one on, okay? And that will change things. And I'd even go in here and I would turn this off and I would put it like that just to kind of getting started shooting flash. Another subject, another time. I would keep F-Log View Assist to off. If you don't know what F-Log is, definitely keep it off. Electronic levels setting. I always love this and I keep it on 2D. It just has that green and white line that, keeps the camera, in the right orientation. And of course, if you put it into 3D, I call it kind of like roller coaster mode because not only is it like, left and right, but it's whoa. Surround view, not all cameras have this option, but the X-E5 does. If you put it on line, say, you'll see like, a line around it. If you're cropping in, it can be very helpful. I just keep mine on black and I move on and live my good life. Okay, DISP custom setting. This one is an important one right here. It allows you to pick what you see in the LCD screen. There are a number of things that you want to keep in here. The most important one of all, I think, is the histogram. Make sure you put a check in there. If you don't know what a histogram is, put a check in there anyway, and then go watch my video on the histogram. Large indicators mode, on or off, that's up to you. I keep mine off, but for example, if you look at the LCD screen right here, you see the indicators. If you go and you put it into large indicators mode, see how it changes? You can also go into large indicators display setting and choose and pick which ones you want. Information contrast adjust. I lately have been using this more and more. I put mine in high contrast. I find that it makes the menu items easier to see. All right, we're done with screen setup. Let's go into button dial setting. There are some extremely important settings in this one. Okay, focus lever setting. That's one of the big ones. I keep mine kind of like this: push, center, tilt, edit. In other words, what happens when you're monkeying around with this little joystick right here? So you see how my focus square is like kind of down in the corner? The way I have it set right here, I just simply press once, boom, and it resets right to the center. I kind of like that. And if I want to edit the size of the square, I just move the joystick and then I can rotate the command dials to change things around. Honestly, I never really use the Q menu, but a lot of you do. It's very customizable. I have a whole video on how to set it up and all of that, but I just don't think the Q menu is something you want to focus on, particularly if you've just purchased the X-E5. A lot more important stuff you need to learn first. Now, there's a lot of important settings here, but the defaults are fine. And next, you have shutter autofocus and shutter auto exposure. For that one, I keep these both to on, and shutter auto exposure, same thing. Basically, it auto focuses as you're pressing down the shutter release and also shows you the auto exposure, locks it in. You should stop what you're doing right now. The sun should not set today until you change the following two settings. The first, shoot without lens. You want this camera to use any lens you put on it, okay? If I want to use this Rokinon lens, have a look at this right here. There are no contact points. You see that? Like these pretty gold ones right here. They connect and touch and attach to these little electrical contact points here. They do that so that the lens can talk to the camera and the camera can give direction to the lens. Things like autofocus or what current aperture you're setting, things like that. The problem is if you have a lens that doesn't talk to the camera at all, what happens when you go ahead and you put one of these old-fashioned, non-electrical, living in their own world lenses on, third party? Nothing will happen. And you will be out there wondering, what's going on? My camera's broken. PALDetect told me to set it up this way, and you'll be trying to shoot and nothing will happen. That will make me mad, bad, and sad. So what you have to do is go in here and make shoot without lens on. And that will make it so the camera will allow you to put any lens on earth on here, as long as it fits the mount, and it will shoot the image, okay? Next is even more important. Shoot without card should always be off. I don't know why Fujifilm keeps that defaulted to on. That's one of the great mysteries, like, who built the pyramids? I just don't get it. What that means is that you can go out and shoot all day long and everything's great, and you won't have any SD cards in here. Your camera won't be saving anything. And then you'll get back home and you'll go, I can't wait to see my... What you want is if you set it to shoot without card off, basically, you're telling your camera, tell me right away that I forgot to put an SD card in here. Okay, moving on. I recommend turning all of the touchscreen functions off, and then you can always just turn it back on. The accidental hitting it sometimes, or the defaults out of the box because there's a swipe up, a swipe left, right, down. So we're gonna go ahead in here and just turn it off. This can be useful for playback. So if you have touchscreen setting and you just keep this one on, that means that when you're reviewing your images and you're playing them back, the ones you've already taken, and you can then pinch and zoom in and see if you focused. So that's a good one. Power management. Oh, this is it. Performance. When you buy the camera, think it's on normal. I do not understand why. This just makes me want a shot of whiskey, okay? Because if you buy a camera like this, why wouldn't you want the autofocus to be as accurate as possible? Why wouldn't you want the camera to perform as well? Put it in boost. Now, what do you want to boost? For now, if you don't know what any of these are, put it in frame rate priority. Next, and we're just about done, auto power off temperature. This is such an important setting. Put it to high. And you'll get this, Fujifilm attorney written message telling you the maximum temperature limit is raised higher. Click OK and make sure it says high here. That way, if you're using your camera to shoot video, it is not going to just auto shut down in the middle of your shot. Save data setup. For frame number, if you see it in renew, put it in continuous. That way it will always give every shot you take a unique number. Now we get into network settings. And if you're using the Fujifilm app, I have a whole video on that. So just go to that video and learn about it, all right? If you do not plan on using the Fujifilm app, go into Bluetooth smartphone setting and make sure that Bluetooth is off. So right now, go ahead and put your camera in movie mode. On the X-E5, go ahead and press the drive delete button, and you can scroll down until you hit movie. A faster way to do this would be, instead of scrolling down, just move it up one notch and you'll hit, it kind of goes around in a circle, like this. Boom. Movie settings can actually be very confusing for new users because of the compression stuff, the codecs, and all of that. I have an entire video for beginners teaching you exactly what all of the menus mean in Fujifilm. I'm saying that because I'm not going to be teaching the different settings. I'm just going to tell you what I think would be my recommended setup for new users of the camera that want to be sure that if they flip over and start shooting video, that they're getting off to a good start. So go ahead, press menu OK, get into the menu, and you'll see that you are in the dedicated movie menu. And you'll know that because you'll see the little movie icon at the top of the menu. One of the most confusing parts of this is the difference between movie setting list, right? These options right here, and then say going into here. Again, see my video on this, but let's go through the settings and here's what I recommend. For now, I will just tell you that movie setting list is nothing more than a little storage place for shortcuts that jump you off to other areas of the menu to make setting changes. So with that in mind, we are going to ignore it completely and start with movie mode right here. What I would recommend as a starting point is to shoot in 4K 16:9 at 30 frames a second. And you probably won't see 30, you'll see 2997, but go ahead and choose that one. That will give you a very high quality video in a frame rate that will work across pretty much everything. As you get into other frame rates, such as 25, say, if mostly in Europe, you'll see that, or 24 frames a second, which is that cinematic look. It's what you'll see if you go to a movie theater, you watch a movie on a big screen, but I recommend 2997, and that is a good starting point. Make sure high-speed record is off. Next is media record setting, and this is the menu that confuses a lot of Fujifilm users. What you want to be sure you have it set to is SD. Do not put it in HDMI unless you have your camera connected via an HDMI cable into a recorder. If you have an SD card on your camera and you are out and about shooting, you must have it right here, just like that. In fact, this little screen right here is so important. I'm going to go ahead and put the red light on, all right? Next, you want to use the joystick and jump over to the right, and you'll see a really confusing menu. These are the compression settings and the container settings for your video. So I would recommend that you choose H265 422, not 420, 422. The reason for that is you will get 10-bit, as you can see right here, and the quality of your audio will be better because instead of recording AAC format, you will be recording LPCM. Go watch my video on this if you want to know more about it, but this is what I would set it for. Over here, choose the highest bit rate your camera has. In this case, it's 200. The bit rate that you set for your video is one of the most important settings you can make. The higher the bit rate, the better the quality. Moving on, HDMI output setting. Make sure to have that turned off. Here's another important one, F-Log recording. If you do not know what F-Log is, definitely come in here and make sure you have the top selection enabled right here. Obviously, if you're going to be shooting in F-Log format, F-Log 2, you go ahead and make those setting changes, but for most of you, leave it set like this. Photometry for video, I would choose multi to get started. Flickerless shutter speed setting, we're going to keep it off. IS mode is important. For video, I would leave this on, except for one exception. That's if the camera is locked down on a tripod. That's it. Now, if the camera's sitting on a table, same thing. But if the camera is handheld in any way, shape, or form, or if the camera is sitting on a table on a boat, okay? Any other situation that there might be any kind of movement, keep IS mode 2 on. And you may see one or two or both of these choices here. If your camera has IBIS built in, or if you have a lens that has OIS on it, then IBIS OIS, you might see that one available. The other option right here includes digital image stabilization, DIS, for some cameras. Don't enable that, okay, for getting started. Most of the time, you're not going to want to use that. Just have it on IBIS OIS if your camera supports that mode. For IS mode boost, turn that off unless you know what you're doing. And by know what you're doing, I mean the only time you should be using that is if you are the tripod. If you're standing there holding the camera like this, try putting IS mode boost 2 on. It makes a big difference. However, if you're doing anything else other than holding the camera, right, but for any other reason, turn it off. ISO setting, when shooting video, most of the time you're going to want to have everything manual and manually control exposure and all that. What I would recommend for movie shooting is the same thing for stills. Go into auto and leave it in auto. Keep it in auto just like that. Some of you may have auto 1, 2, and 3. If that's the case, do what I showed you in the stills section earlier in the video. Movie optimized control, turn that off for now. Now, some of you may like using that in the future. It's too easy to get confused, and if you have that on and the touchscreen is now taken over, it'll override your settings here. Long story short, if you're a beginner, if you're new to Fujifilm, keep it off until you get a good grasp of movie shooting on the camera. Record frame indicator, yeah, I'd keep that on so you have that red box showing. Basically, when you're recording, boom, you see the red right there. And by the way, if you don't see it red, but you see it a different color, and that means you accidentally have high-speed record turned on, which means go back into your menu, into high-speed record, and turn that off. Now we go into the IQ section of your movie menu. Film simulation dial setting, obviously it's the same thing as you had for stills. For the film simulation you want to use for movie shooting, I still would recommend Provia Standard for video shooting for starting out. However, a very good contender is Eterna. Eterna is going to give you a much less saturated, lower contrast look. White balance on auto. Normally you should always set your white balance manual for video shooting. I mean, in just about every case. But if you're brand new at this, particularly if you're shooting outside, go ahead and just put it on auto. Dynamic range, I would keep it either 100 or 200. I would not put it at 400. It's going to raise your ISO, I think, too much. I keep mine at 100. For sharpness, I actually would recommend putting this at either -1 or -2. I found that sometimes the footage that comes out of these Fujifilm cameras can be a little bit too sharp. High ISO noise reduction, keep it at 0. Autofocus, manual focus for video. Oh boy, that's a whole other topic. Autofocus mode. Getting started, keep it in area. You may switch to wide tracking in certain situations. I would avoid multi almost all the time. AFC custom setting. What I would recommend for this would be tracking sensitivity, keep it on 2. Autofocus speed, I'd keep it on 5, particularly with the X-E5 camera. However, if you are following a subject, say it's sports, okay, I would then put it into 4 for tracking sensitivity. But for general shooting situations, keep it on 2. Face eye, subject detection, AF+MF, all of these are the same settings I told you for stills. If you're jumping into this video just now, go ahead and wind it back to the earlier portion of this video because I talk about these two settings and it's good info for you to know. In the meantime, AF+MF, put it on. Manual focus assist, I talked about that earlier. Same logic applies to movie as what I said earlier. Okay, touch screen mode. Now, while I said that should definitely be off for stills, particularly for new users of Fujifilm, for video, you might want to keep it on. And I would keep it to AF. That allows you to set the focus point on your screen while the video is being shot. If you have your AF+MF setting, which would be right here, your mode, if you put it in wide tracking, you're going to be able to tap the subject on the screen and the camera will track that subject with the focus. I would just keep this on like that. For the microphones, I would leave these both on 0. Never go above 0. And if you don't want to be screwing around with setting the levels, the easiest thing of all is just stick it in auto. Stick them both in auto. You're good to go. Mic level limiter, keep that on. And what that does is any audio that's recorded into your camera while you're shooting your video, either from the onboard microphones or from a microphone that you connect to your camera, this will prevent that audio from being clipped, okay, from going above 0 dB. It's a great setting, keep it on. Mic jack setting, keep it on mic, unless you know the difference between these two and you need a line input. Wind filter and low cut filter, keep those off. Mic remote release, you want to keep it on mic if you're plugging in a microphone into the mic jack on the camera. XLR mic adapter setting. If you don't know what XLR means, then ignore this and don't worry about it. If you do, you already know what to set. Time code, forget the whole thing unless you know about time code and you need it. Okay, back down to the wrench. There's nothing we need to set here because we already did so in the stills portion earlier on in this video. You're all done with that. Same thing with the network menu. We already took care of it. When you're out shooting video, what you always want to do when you're shooting video is your shutter speed on your camera should be double your frame rate. Remember when we set our camera, we chose 2997 as the frame rate. 2997 is basically 30 frames a second. So if you're shooting at 30 frames a second, your shutter speed is 1/60th of a second. Go ahead and just make sure it's double your frame rate at 160. If you are shooting at, say, 24 frames a second, what's your shutter speed? 1/48th of a second. 24 doubled, right? Double your frame rate. You can't set it on this dial exactly. So what you do is you put it close enough. Like, you know, I put it to 30, okay? Or you could put it to 60 and then rotate the rear command dial. There it is, 48. You see that right there? If you would like to quickly format an SD card on the X-E5 camera, take one finger, press and hold the drive delete button. You see that right there. press and hold that, and then while you're holding it down, then with your other finger, press and hold the command dial down, just like that. Boom, see? That's it. That's it. This was fast. I told you. Fast. Fast Friday. I like that. Let's call it Fast Friday. We're going to do videos, tips and tricks, but they'll be fast. Fast, 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 because I know you all have things to do. So do I. In fact, I got to get out of here. Bye-bye.